Hello, everyone. It's top of the hour, so we will get started. Thank you to everyone for joining our webinar today, Farm to School Canada Grants, a Guide for Applicants. My name is Jessie Veenstra, and I'm the manager of Farm to School Initiative with Farm to Cafeteria Canada, and I'm here speaking to you today from Vancouver, British Columbia. Before we go any further, just so that we know everyone can hear us, can we get everyone just to raise your hands? You should see an option. Oh, I'm seeing lots of hands raised. Perfect. Glad you can hear us loud and clear. I'd like to take a couple of minutes just to introduce my co-facilitators for today before we get started. So joining me today on the line is Claudia Paez, and Claudia is a regional lead for Farm to School here in BC, also joining me from Vancouver, and she's with the Public Health Association of Vancouver, or sorry, of BC, and in a few moments you'll hopefully get to see her lovely face on our next slide. We also have joining us Carolyn Webb, who is joining us from Ottawa today, and she is the animator, or sorry, regional lead for Farm to School in Ontario. Both Carolyn and Claudia are part of an initiative with Farm to Cafeteria Canada called Farm to School Canada Digs In. And this initiative is really a multi-sectoral, multi-year partnership with 10 principal partner agencies across the country who are bringing you the webinar today. So as I mentioned, Carolyn and Claudia on the line with me today, and Farm to School Canada Digs In. And now that you know a little bit about us, we've got a couple of polls for everybody, and just wanting to get a sense of who is joining us on the line. So I'll get Carolyn to throw those polls up for us. Okay, so it looks like we've got lots of folks joining us from Ontario, a few in BC, Alberta. And then our next question, in terms of what hat do you wear? I'm sure many of you wear multiple hats listed here, but lots of teachers, community partners, parents, a few growers, and food service workers. So that's great. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. We're going to chat to you a little bit today about the Farm to School Canada grants. And first of all, I'm going to do that through giving a bit of an introduction to the Farm to School approach, as well as the salad bar food service model, and some tips for preparing successful grant applications. We'll highlight a few components there. And so we'll also leave ample time for questions and answers at the end, because I'm sure lots of you have many questions. If there are any questions that we don't get to, we will respond to those. You can type them in the question box, and we will respond to any that we aren't able to answer online over email. So without further delay, we will get into the content. A little bit about the Farm to School Canada grants. This is a partnership between Farm to Cafeteria Canada and Whole Kids Foundation. We've been partnering with Whole Kids Foundation since about 2016, and we're excited to be offering our third round of the grants. So currently we have about 91 schools that have received funding for 2-year terms with grants of up to $10,000 each. And that's across 5 provinces thus far. And we're really excited this year to be offering the grants to all provinces and territories throughout the country. And some of these specifics in terms of the outlines of the grants are also found on our website, as well as the grant guidelines as well. Before we dive into anything, I wanted to take a few moments to give an overview of the Farm to School approach. So often we talk about Farm to School as a program, and while that tends to be the way that it manifests within the school setting, really Farm to School is a lens through which we think about and approach school foods and our school food programs. And so really it's made up of these 3 core components that I'll talk about in the next few slides. And the vision for Farm to School approach is really to bring more healthy, local, and sustainable foods to the minds and plates of students. So the first sort of puzzle piece from the former graphic, and kind of pillar of the farm to school approach is healthy local food and schools. And this is really just speaking to offering students either through a meal or snack program an opportunity to experience healthy food on their plates. And this comes in many different models. Today, we're going to focus on the salad bar model, as that's sort of at the heart of these grants. But you can also read more about different models of farm to school or local food to school on our website, on our farm to school page. The next pillar of farm to school is food literacy. So really providing students with an opportunity to have hands-on learning, to learn not just about what food is healthy and makes up a healthy diet, but also essential skills in cooking and preparing, preserving, gardening, and just general understanding of the food system on a whole. And so that can also include activities like composting. It's really sort of the full circle of local food systems. And Claudia and Carolyn will talk a little bit about examples of this in action at some of our existing grantee schools. Last but not least, community partners are sort of the final piece of the farm to school puzzle. And community partners look different in every school, every community, and they're often not limited to just one type of community partner. Importantly, for the grants, you will see if you've reviewed the guidelines, and we'll talk about today, that we ask for a co-applicant for all grants to be a community partner. And the reason for that is community partners really help to connect schools to the broader community, but they offer essential skills that can relate to helping to provide food, so sourcing local food can be really critical. Also, those food literacy pieces as well. And so, for example, you see here in the photo, a chef in New Brunswick who is giving a demonstration on sort of preparing a salad bar service, both in terms of variety, quantities, and giving some tips around how to make that fun and accessible for students. So chefs, farmers, different NGOs are all great examples of community partners. So now that we have a bit of understanding of the farm to school approach, I'm going to talk about the salad bar service. And Claudia and Carolyn are going to provide some specific examples, but I just wanted to take a minute to provide a bit of an overview. And as I mentioned, the salad bar is really a type of food service model that seeks to provide as much healthy, local, and sustainable food as possible to students. And we really encourage creativity, and it's exciting to see the creative models that different schools sort of come to the table with in terms of how they envision and roll out salad bars. There are a few core things that we do look for in terms of consistency across all salad bars, and so I'll speak just briefly to those. The first is that we try to give students an opportunity to serve themselves as much as possible, really to encourage their creativity and not only just and curiosity, and not only just serve themselves, but also really have a role in determining what is served in the salad bar, and if possible, even helping to prepare it. So that's one piece. Another element is that we look for the salad bar offering to provide a complete meal according to Canada's Food Guide. So at least 3 choices of fruits and vegetables to be served, as well as protein and grain options. That's sort of the bare minimum. You're not limited to that. And you can see in this photo that it's a very colorful salad bar with lots of different options for students to choose from. And this next slide just shows the salad bar in action and really just kind of speaks to the different models that the salad bar can take. So while you'll see oftentimes schools will have a salad bar unit itself, it doesn't have to be the case. There are many ways that you can roll out a salad bar, as you'll see in the photo on the right. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Carolyn to talk a little bit about getting started and incorporating farm to school salad bar into the broader food system.
Super. Thanks so much, Jesse. And yeah, this story that I'm going to share is one of Oakwood Public School. They're located in Oakville in Ontario, fairly close to Toronto. It's a school of about 220 students, quite a mixed demographic. And I just wanted to share their example as a school, like how their process of developing the salad bar started, because they really integrated all the themes of farm to school in that. And so their process came about when they decided to have a strong focus on healthy schools with their school. They had a student nutrition program and decided that they'd like to go further than that. They had their healthy school club plant harvest a small vegetable garden. And then when they received the grant, they started to do other events around it to raise awareness before they got started. They had free salad bar at the Meet the Teacher night to just help families get a feel for the salad bar and what they were trying to do. They held a Great Big Crunch event in October. They had a local gardener who visited the school to speak about what living things need and help build self-irrigating planters in January. And then they had a film screening with a discussion about where does our food come from, so that all the students were really primed around this idea of healthy eating and veggies and fruits and just what the salad bar meant within the broader food system by the time they launched it in April. So then they had a farmer visit. Since then, they've gone on tours of farms. They've increased the food literacy awareness. And I know a couple of years ago, they had over half of their student population participating in the salad bar and being really keen. They built their programs up. Their big champions were a public health nurse and a parent volunteer. And yeah, they've continued to try out vermicomposting, planting vegetables in bucket gardens. They are working the food skills into their classroom learning. They say making le pita for French class or blending hummus to learn about food groups in health class. And so healthy food is really permeating the culture of the school. I think that's it for Oakville, or for Oakwood Public School for now. Jesse, could you go to the next slide? Great, thanks. The other example I'll share in Ontario is Eastdale Collegiate High School. It's located in Toronto itself. And so they received a $10,000 salad bar in 2016 as well. Just some of the interesting things I'll highlight about Eastdale. I could tell a lot of stories about them, about the amazing things they're doing, but one interesting thing to note is they've implemented where they don't have a cafeteria service, but they do serve some lunches for the students. They operated on a paid or on a free basis based on their student nutrition program funding, as well as other ways that they've made it work. But they have different classes take on the responsibility for the salad bar over the different years. In one year, their second year, it was integrated into the curriculum of the grade 11 environmental science class. And that class took responsibility. They learned about it, the environmental impacts of food production systems. They gained hands-on experiences planting and growing food for the salad bar. They explored opportunities for purchasing local food in the city of Toronto. And then the students were also, they have a really great approach where students become salad bar ambassadors. And so they get to help prepare and then promote the food. So the students become really engaged in the process. And the first year of the program, the class had been, or the salad bar was run by a different class. It was called the Seed to Market and Exploring the World of Work classes. And they did the promotion and delivery of the salad bar. They also, some people might have heard of Eastdale Collegiate. They have a huge rooftop garden that they've set up and grow food for market through a program of Food Share Toronto. But this really let them get the food that they were already growing into a salad bar model where they could serve it to their students, which wasn't a piece that they had in the program. And so we see through these examples just the different ways that schools are building on what they've already done to be able to offer a more complete farm to school model, and some great examples of ways that students can then, eat the produce in their own school environment. So with that, I'll pass it along to Claudia to share some examples from BC.
Thank you so much, Caroline. So in the following slides, I will show you how unique can farm to school look like at the school here in BC and of course across Canada. Lucerne School, Elementary Secondary School, is placed in New Denver, BC. And the information that I will share with you is from one of the field trips that I had to the schools, and particular to this school that right now they are a former grantee, Farm to Cafeteria Canada grantee. Lucerne School were partnering at that time with BC Healthy Community Society to offer 3 hot lunches and 2 salad bar services each week. They had a greenhouse and a composter that you can take a look at the center of the slide, and an indoor microgreens operation that provide food for the salad bar service as well. And they purchase food from local farmers as well. The school also had a unique and gorgeous community garden that even has an outdoor gazebo and a clay oven for baking bread. So what I think that is very remarkable of this garden concept was like sharing a space for the broad community. So everybody was and is welcome to come and to walk around. And the clay oven they used for special events with the entire community. At the center of the slide, you also can see some pieces of art created by a student from the art class, and they decorate the gazebo ceiling, and also with beautiful, colorful stones, and decorate the way where the people can walk around through the garden. The following slide, please. This is a totally different concept of farm to school, and these come from Lord Roberts Elementary in downtown Vancouver, BC. So this is a very urban area. Lord Robert has an enclosed garden, totally different how it looks at Lucerne School, and is mainly for teaching or learning purposes. They start with some, I think that they were originally 6 beds, and they added 12 more beds to make the garden much bigger. They also install an outdoor classroom that you can take a look at the center of the slide, and with not so much investment, just bringing together the benches that they already had at the school. And with the support of Farm to Cafeteria Canada and in partnership with Growing Chef and Fresh Roots, the school launched a Lunch Lab program. Lunch Lab program provides grade 5, 6, and 7 students with hands-on cross-curricular learning and around food literacy while preparing a healthy local lunch for 150 students. The school originally started providing food once a week, and today they provide salad bar and hot lunch program twice a week. I had the privilege to work and to volunteer with them last year, and the program looks astonishing. The food is so good. The kids line up before the lunchtime start, making some pressure to the team to hurry with the food, and everybody has the chance to share during the lunchtime, teachers and students. The following slide describe how local food sourcing looks in some of our schools. In Haida Nation, they embrace farm to school program, and they provide a cultural meaning to farm to school program. So in the island, they call it local food to school. They bring to the plates green leaves and other veggies, seasonal berries, seafood like salmon and clams, and venison. They run local food to school in partnership with gatherers, hunters, fishermen, and farmers, elders, PAC members, and local organization. The students from Gurangai Klasga Nai school participate in field trips, including deer hunting, fishing, clam digging, and harvesting on the land. And this information is remarkable to me. In the fall of 2018, the Hagen Elementary School served 12 salad bars, and during that period, they were able to serve salad bars. And my last example describe how 5 schools in Comox Valley work together. The map on the screen represents part of Comox Valley in Vancouver Island. There are 5 schools in the valley with Farm to Cafeteria Canada grant and in partnership with several local organizations. Along the year have shaped a farm to school hub. Haven Park Elementary, Brooklyn Elementary, Echo Rock Road, Mark R. Isfeld, and Lake Troy Middle School have learned from and supported each other and collaborate together. They share recipes, menus, and salad bars model to implement at each school, being flexible enough to adapt to the specific context at each school. They celebrate cultural diversity through offering menus inspired on Asian, Greek, Mexican, Indigenous, and Mediterranean meals. And this school purchased their local food from several local farms. And you can see the name of the farms on the left side of the screen. And also they get Salich seafood from Comox First Nation. Go back to you, Jessie.
Thank you, Claudia, and thank you, Carolyn, for walking us through some great examples of Farm to School Canada grants programs in action. And I think these just hopefully really illustrate for folks the ways that those 3 pieces of the Farm to School approach really kind of naturally integrate together. And that's really a core component that we're looking for, is to see those 3 pieces represented in the grant applications. So with that, I'm going to move into, briefly before that, just some additional links that are also available on our website on the grants page. But if you're looking for more information about the salad bar, we do have a salad bar webpage, as well as if you're looking for information on how to get started with your salad bar and Farm to School in general, the Farm to School New Brunswick guide is a great way, or is a great resource. And although it's been developed for New Brunswick, it's really helpful for interested parties, no matter what region you live in. And with that, we'll move into highlighting a few things around the grant application process and the guidelines before we open up for some questions and answers. So the first thing to consider, if you're considering applying for a grant or perhaps are already in the process of developing an application, a few questions that you might want to ask yourself are listed here on this slide. And really, if you answer yes to all or most of these questions, that's a good indicator that you might be in a good position to apply for and be competitive for one of the grants. And a few things just to highlight. We are looking for some level of farm to school activity already underway at the school. That doesn't mean that you have to have a really robust program, but we are looking for some types of activities that can vary from having a school garden or incorporating learning around food literacy and local food systems into your classes and programming where possible, or even things like having a composting program if that's feasible in your community. Those are all good examples of farm to school activities. The next, and I can't really stress this enough, and you'll see throughout the application guidelines, is we really know from our experience with these programs that it's essential that there be strong support in the leadership at the school level. And so that's why we do ask for the lead applicant to be the principal or vice principal. And we just know that that's really essential for sort of the success and sustainability of the program. The next, I already spoke a little bit about sort of the key role that community partners play, but in addition to the principal lead applicant, we do ask that a community partner be a co-applicant, willing to sign on as a co-applicant. And that doesn't mean that you can only have one community partner. Others may be incorporated into your team, but we do look for one to be the co-applicant. The next is that you feel like you'll have the capacity to implement and deliver the salad bar. It works out to be on average about 2 times a month during the grant term. Many schools we find do it more than that. Often they'll run salad bars weekly, or some that have capacity, if they have cafeterias and food services, they even offer it daily. But the minimum that we ask for is about 2 times a month, with the exception being in the first year, and Carolyn spoke to that a little bit in her example of Oakwood Public School. We do recognize that in the first year it takes a little bit to get going, and it's really important to kind of build that enthusiasm around the salad bar. And so we understand that you may not offer it as many times in the first year, and we ask really that it be offered a minimum of 8 times in the first year. And then the last piece is really just that desire and willingness to embed and strengthen food literacy. So it's not just about food literacy and not just about offering students an opportunity to access healthy local food at school, but it's really the integration of those 2 things together that we've seen in the examples that Claudia and Carolyn have presented. So the next piece is budget. Worth highlighting just a few things, and you will find that in the grant application itself and the template that's been provided for preparing proposals, there's lots of information within the budget chart that's been provided around what we're looking for each section of the budget. But just want to highlight a couple of things, and the first is that the proposed budget really is aligned with the scope of the activities that you're proposing throughout the rest of your application. You'll also notice that in the budget, there's an opportunity to list not only what funds you're seeking from Farm to Cafeteria Canada, but also if you have other funding sources. And so it's helpful if you note those other funding sources because it helps us just to have an understanding if you have really big goals and it seems like the budget's not quite lining up. If we see that you've got other sources of funding that will help that along, that helps us to understand the bigger picture. The next piece is that 15% of funds must be earmarked towards training of your farm to school team. So that might be the person that sort of, quite often is the person that's sort of operating the programming and activities on a day-to-day basis. As much as we want to encourage food literacy for the students, we also want to provide that opportunity for the folks that are involved in facilitating the program as well. It's really nice to be able to connect with other folks that are leading these programs in your region or in other regions, and also really helps with the sustainability of the initiatives. The next one is just around equipment. There's an opportunity to upload quotes of equipment that are greater than $1,200, and the maximum for any single piece of equipment is $3,000. If you do have a piece of equipment that's more than that, that's okay. It's just that you need to find the balance of funding from another source, and you can indicate that in the grant application. Last but not least is a couple of things that the grant funding cannot be used towards, and that's both school staff salary as well as a paid person to operate the salad bar, as well as continuous food costs. And the reason for that is because funds would run out really quickly if we allowed them to be used towards those 2 items, and really we're looking to have creative models to build sustainable farm to school salad bars. Another important aspect of the applications is letters of support. So while these aren't necessarily required, these really help us to understand the bigger picture of initiatives that are being proposed and know that there's really the capacity and willingness to support them within the broader community. So We do encourage seeking letters of support from a few different folks, so that might include your school board or school district, often your public health or environmental health officer. So basically indication that they're in support from a food safety perspective, parent advisory committee, different community partners, as well as any other local kind of health bodies that might be engaged in your programming. And certainly that's not an exhaustive list, but just some things to think about to get you started. You know your community's best, and so we really look to you to determine who might be good to seek a letter of support from. And last but not least, just a few things to close out with respect to competitive applications and what our reviewers will be looking for. As I mentioned earlier, really embracing all three of those pillars of the farm to school approach and that they're integrated. Clear and realistic vision and goals. We want to be inspired, and I know we will be. We always are, just with sort of the creativity and passion within the applications that we see. Demonstration of a team approach, that really is just speaking to the fact that this isn't resting on one person's shoulders, and that there's evidence of folks that might be part of the farm to school team in your school having been involved right from the get-go in the application process. And then last but not least, there's opportunity to upload a work plan that you'll see in the application. And so what we're looking for in that is, again, just realistic goals. Often SMART goals are a good way to approach it. So specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-based. If that's helpful tool for you to lay out your work plan, that's something that we'll be looking for. And then I would just stress really reading the application really closely. We've done our best to try and include lots of tips and be really thorough in each of the questions with respect to the information that we're looking for. So just read those thoroughly, answer them to the best of your abilities, and please don't leave any questions blank. So having said all of that, I'm sure there are lots of questions. I'll just give a quick reminder that this year's application is online, and you can access that on our website. And then before moving to the online application, we've also provided a template for preparing your responses under how to apply, and it looks like the right-hand side of your screen there is what the cover page of that looks like, if you find that helpful for uploading your application. But without further ado, I'll move it into question and answer, which Carolyn is going to help us moderate. So you can type your questions into the Q&A box or raise your hand if you would like us to unmute you, and you can ask your questions directly. And as I said, if we don't get to all of them, we will do our best to respond to any remaining questions over email.
Thanks,
I'll pass it over to you, Carolyn.
So we have the first question that I have for everyone actually is, could presenters provide some information about how they've been able to sustain the food and other costs over time? Do you want to have a start to that question, Jessie?
Yeah, so definitely lots of different models within the different schools. Often there's other contributing funding sources. So for instance, from the Parent Advisory Committee, sometimes schools will do school fundraisers, like a local food basket for working with local farmers. And that provides an opportunity, usually in the fall, for schools to purchase, or for families in the school community to purchase a healthy local food basket. And there's some information about that on our website as well. And so a portion of those proceeds go back to the farmers, but also to the school. And some have even made their salad bar service itself service as a bit of a fundraiser that injects back and becomes sort of a self-sustaining model. So those are a few things that come to mind. Carolyn or Claudia, do you have anything to add to that?
Some schools charge for the salad bars. Some charge $2 $2.50 or $3.50 for each serve, that allowed them to run part of the salad bar, sustain it in the long term. And for those kids that can afford salad bars, the pack or the school provide the funding, so nobody is behind.
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar to Claudia in that a lot of schools do charge a base fee somewhere between $3. Some charge as much as $5 to each student who pays. Often they'll ask for it in a block, like an 8-week block or a 10-week block. So students sign up, and they do make sure to have subsidies or other ways to make sure that students who can't access it or can still do so. There are a bunch of, I think a lot of the grant, the 2 or 3, like the years that schools are setting up the grant or implementing the grant, is really trying to figure out what model actually makes sense and works. And so yeah, how much do you have to charge to cover the costs, or can you get local funders to support enough? And so it's all about the community and the people involved and the opportunities available. Alrighty, we have a lot of questions coming in. So someone is asking more info about the schools that used other funders to support a free lunch. And I can answer that one specifically around student nutrition funding. In Ontario, there are student nutrition programs that where schools that run a student nutrition program get a 15% contribution from the Ontario Ministry of Education, and then that's matched by community partners. And so some have included the salad bar program as a part of that. I don't actually know the exact way the funding flows and what that looks like exactly, but it is to provide meals and snacks to students during the day. And so people are figuring out how to integrate them into other existing programs. Claudia, would you have anything else to say about any schools that operate it for free?
No, not really.
Okay. We have a question about, have elementary schools participated, or do the participating schools tend to be high school age? And I can answer that. Actually, one of the previous things about how do you sustain a program at the high school level, they do integrate it into their cafeteria service and figure out the models to make a lot of sense. Some do burrito bars, or integrate like a taco day where they have all the veggies and you just make it into a taco or a burrito or a wrap or whatever. There's a whole lot of ways. And so yeah, both elementary schools as well as high schools make it work. They just have different looking models. Anyone else want to contribute more to that question?
As I mentioned before, in some secondary school in Hawaii, the kids have the wonderful opportunity to participate in traditional activities. So as I said, they go for hunting or participate or go to the shore and see how the fisherman works, and all these traditional activities, or gathering food also.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Claudia and Carolyn. I think the only thing that I would add to it is sometimes, depending on how your schools are situated within your community, there are lots of schools where elementary and secondary schools are located next to each other, and often they will partner, and it's an opportunity for mentorship for the older students to work with elementary students, and also to serve those students and just involve them in different ways. So that's yet another model, is really kind of integrating the two, if that's something that's feasible in your community.
Great, thanks everyone. We have a question, Jessie, for you. What training opportunities are available for training school team members? I think it's just, what does that training piece look like?
Yeah, what the training piece looks like. So in the past, we've offered the grants in select provinces. And so within each of those provinces, we've hosted regional training. So an opportunity to bring folks from across the province together, and so some of that funding can be used to cover that travel for people to attend that training in their province. And it's usually a full day or a day and a half of presentations, opportunity to network with folks who have participated in the grants before, and really just an opportunity to kind of connect, and it looks different in every region. That being said, this year, we're still finalizing what that will look like, in part because we're offering it across all provinces and territories, and it will depend a little bit in terms of where the successful grants are located. And so there might be a bit of cross-provincial travel or some web-based training, or possibly a hybrid. So I would say stay tuned for that. The only other piece that I would add is that oftentimes schools, if they have funding left over in their budget, they can use that towards attending like conferences or symposia in their region, or doing specific certifications like upgrading their food safe, or if there's other kind of relevant courses. So there is some flexibility in there as well.
Thanks, Jessie. I have a question probably for Jessie. Is it difficult to get approval from public health for the school salad bar model?
That is a great question. I would say it really depends on the region that you're in. It looks different everywhere. And we know, for instance, in Quebec in particular, that's a little bit different in terms of how their food safety approval takes place. And so I would say reach out as soon as possible to your local public health and just inquire about what would be required. Engage those folks early, because it really does depend. Different regions and even different health officers have sort of different requirements. And so it's helpful to just get an understanding of what that looks like in your community. But I would say by and large, you know, they tend to be very supportive, and it's sort of an exciting project for them to be involved with. And so as long as you develop that relationship, I would say you hopefully should not have too many issues.
Yeah, thanks. For the most part, all the schools who I've heard from have said that with the right, you know, just working through the details and that it has been acceptable by the public health inspector. They just had to figure out the configuration that would work. Here's the next question. Can we use some funds for honorariums for Indigenous resource persons? Jessie.
Yeah, so I would say yes. Often funds are great in terms of community members or honoraria for Indigenous knowledge keepers. I would just say that typically it's sort of a one-time recognition, so not necessarily like an ongoing position. But I think sometimes the way that schools will structure it is that they'll provide an honorarium for a community member to come into the school, you know, a few times a year, or for students to be able to go to them and learn. But absolutely, that's a good use of the honoraria funding.
Thanks, Jessie. Next question, how do schools end up getting the food costs covered? Do they ask students to pay for participation? And if so, how are students with income barriers that need the program the most allowed to participate? And we have covered some of that question around just the food cost model and everything. But the second piece there, how are students with barriers to income allowed to participate in? I found a lot of people have different models. Again, some it's an external organization might want to sponsor a number of students during a year. I know I've heard of, you know, at one school 7 or another like 15 students could receive free meals at the salad bar. In another, they just have a policy where if a student is hungry, like if the student wants to eat at the salad bar, you know, they don't ask any questions and they're fine with that. There are ways where they build into the costing model of the salads where there's a, you know, certain percentage that goes towards supporting students who wouldn't have access otherwise. So it all looks different. I don't know if Jesse or Claudia has anything to add.
One of the current grantees give the chance or the opportunity to the parents to contribute anonymously some funding to cover other students. So that particular school, church, for the service, for the salad bars, but there is a kind of box where the parents, other parents that they want to donate and to cover free lunches for others that can't afford for it, they go in that way, or the PAC itself as an organization provides some funding for that.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Claudia. And yeah, I've even heard of a couple of schools where it's really interesting with that model where other parents in the school community can sponsor additional children. They'll often do their salad bar sales online. And Carolyn mentioned you can sort of buy a block of a number of salad bars or a number of weeks of salad bars. And I know that there's at least a couple of schools that say you can basically multiply it by your own child or children, and then add on additional ones as well. And so it's very easy for them to be able to do that as well.
Thanks, everyone. Next question is, my school's in the Comox Valley, where there are already 5 schools who have received the grant. Is there a limit on how many schools can receive the grant in a region?
That's a great question. There's not a limit in terms of the number of schools, no.
Thank you. Here's a question. Would it be acceptable to reach the target of a minimum of 8 school salad bars by spreading it over 4 schools? I work out of an environmental education site for our board and would be delivering a program over more than 1 school. Jesse.
Yeah. So that's a really interesting question. I would say it's challenging to include multiple schools on a single grant. And I should just underscore as well that the individual schools need to receive the funding directly. So we can't actually have funds flowing through either a school board or a community organization. It needs to go directly to the schools. But there is great opportunity to partner with other schools. And so a region like the Comox Valley that Claudia spoke to, where there's multiple schools working together, is a great model. And so I would suggest that if you're looking to support multiple schools, that each of those schools should apply individually, and they should sort of reference each other in their applications and that intention to work together.
Thanks, Jesse. Here's an easy one. Can you save your application and work on it over time, or does it have to be completed in one setting?
Yeah, so this is the first year we've done the online application form. We have made it so that you can save it. And so we hope that that will be okay and an option for everybody, but that's also just as a backup why we've provided the template in a Word document that you can download that has all of the questions, and would just encourage you to sort of compile your responses first before starting the online form. We'd hate for anybody to lose anything, but you can save your responses. And actually the first step when you go to the online application form will ask you to create a username so that you can go back in. But once you have submitted it, you cannot go in and make changes.
Thank you. Next question, how to have the salad bar 10 months a year of local food, and the question is winter. So I think the gist of the question is, like, how do schools support local food procurement in the winter?
Yeah, so that's definitely can be a challenge in many regions, or all regions really of the country. We know the growing season doesn't necessarily align with the school year often. And so there's different ways that schools approach that. Sometimes there's opportunity to partner with local farmers markets in some regions, or local growers that have stock available throughout the winter. So great examples are things like root vegetable crops, things that store well, Another one is sourcing protein. So many schools will get eggs all year round from a local supplier or local dairy for those elements. But in terms of fruit and vegetable, other opportunities are drying and preserving. So schools will sometimes do some of those activities and incorporate them into food literacy in sort of the spring months, and then have them to use for the following year. And then sometimes, depending on where you're located, you can maybe get a little bit out of your growing season in those shoulder seasons of the spring and the fall. Those are just a few examples. I'm not sure, Claudia or Carolyn, feel free to add to that.
I think that the limitation that our weather present across Canada with the long winters spike our creativity and the creativity at the school. So some schools, because of the weather and this limitation, start thinking, okay, what about if we install a greenhouse, or try to reach out on a greenhouse farm, or growing microgreens. So you create with those food literacy activities, and you involve the students as well. Yeah, so those are other alternatives that maybe at the first time will not provide a lot of food, but the idea is to start from little steps, you know, and bringing enthusiasm around the kids. There are tower gardens as well that the food grows indoors.
Yeah, thanks. I would just add that some try to source with local farmers, others go through larger distributors. Apparently Cisco offers a bunch of local products, and there's many of the big distributors do have that. So it depends on the approach that the school wants to use, but that's options. And then, as Claudia mentioned, I mean, some do grow inside the by tower gardens, or yeah, just have other approaches to local, like internal indoor growing options. So so they try to supplement with that. And another question that somebody asked that lends itself to this is there a percentage of the food in the salad bar that must be locally sourced? And Jessie, can you just answer that quickly?
Mm-hmm. So there's not sort of a baseline percentage. We ask schools to sort of set those targets for themselves. We understand that, you know, everybody's capacity is different, and it's important, I think, first and foremost, that you're setting sort of realistic and achievable goals. And so oftentimes schools might say, okay, we're gonna, in our first year, strive for like 10%, and then in our next year, we're gonna strive for 20%. Some schools are much higher than that, and like Claudia spoke to some of the schools in Haida Gwaii, for certain periods of the school year, they're able to source almost 100% locally. So it really depends on your region and your capacity. I think the bottom line thing is to set those targets, and also trying to have those targets increasing over time.
Thank you. All right, we have a number of questions still in 5 minutes, so maybe we'll keep our answers kind of tight and to the point. Have any of the schools had any problems with picky eating or food waste? And I would just say that a lot of the approaches where if you do food literacy education, involve students in creating the food and being responsible for the food really, and knowing where it comes from and all that, you do see a lot of students embracing different choices and just getting excited about the food and eating more than they would otherwise. And then another bit is that the self-serve model is really one where students, the whole, like a requirement of the salad bar is that students serve themselves, and the trend is that if they serve themselves, there's likely to be a lot less food waste and a lot more taking or eating what's on your plate essentially, and being excited about the food that's on your plate. Anything to add, Jessie?
I think you've summed it up well. The only other thing I would say is that I think by and large we see so much excitement from students about the salad bar, often to the surprise, I think, to many parents and sometimes even teachers. And there's something to be said for them seeing their peers engaging, and sort of the positive peer pressure that comes with that for schools, for students to try new things.
Super. Thanks so much. Next question. If a school already has a salad bar, could funds go towards enhancing it, such as a smoothie machine and a tower garden? And I can just answer that one, unless I'm totally wrong, but I don't think I am. Absolutely. It's not a requirement that the school buys a salad bar unit, but it is a requirement that the school serves food in a salad bar, or like in the salad bar model. And so if a school already has a salad bar unit and wants to enhance that, absolutely. Smoothie machines, tower gardens, growing the food for the salad bar, like all sorts of ways are possible. Anything to add, Jessie?
No, that's great.
Super. Do schools usually use one food supplier that sources local food from various local supplies, or individual farms and suppliers? And I would say it all depends on the school and what kind of relationships they want to set up and what sourcing they want to work with. Anyone have any other things to offer there?
No, no.
Yeah, it looks.
I would just say, yeah, I would just say, as long as you sort of clearly outline what your intention is within the application, and there's opportunity to kind of list what your thoughts are and the types of folks you might source from.
Great. Does it matter the size of the school? It's a very small school, and no way, Jessie? Doesn't matter?
No, absolutely not. We have many sort of small schools, some schools even that are everything from kindergarten to grade 12 all in one, just because of the size of community that they're in.
Great, thanks. Can schools co-apply? Two small schools go together on one grant, and I think you addressed it in the last one. No, it's by school, right?
Yeah, I would encourage separate applications and reference each other and your intention to work together.
Super, thanks. Does a salad bar have to be included in the plan? And the answer is yes. The grant is based around the idea of a salad bar, although the question is, if it's a salad bar unit, Jessie, does a salad bar unit have to be included in the plan?
A salad bar unit does not. If you recall back to one of the slides of the picture of the salad bar, they had it laid out in containers. So that's absolutely fine, as long as it meets food safety and the other kind of elements of offering a variety of choices. It doesn't need to be in a salad bar unit.
Super, thanks. Question, I wonder, in other communities, who are the people that run the programs on a regular basis?
It's often, it can be a variety of different folks. Often it's certain teachers who kind of take it on to champion. There's often many parent volunteers, especially at the elementary level, that help with preparation of food, or different community organizations. So sometimes a community partner plays that role. So it really just depends on the school, and we encourage sort of the creativity, and bottom line for you to find something and propose something that you feel like is going to be sustainable in your community.
Super, thank you. Practical question, how do schools track which students have paid for the salad bar if they do it online for multiple weeks? Do they use a punch card system, swipe card, checklist, honor system? This could slow down the process during a short lunch period. I'll let you answer that, Jessie.
Yeah, so again, schools do that in many different ways. Often it's very much the honor system, and we find that tends to work really well. If a student shows up and would like a salad bar meal, then they have it, no questions. And we haven't really found any issues with that, and it helps to keep things flowing through. Other schools do have, so there's one school in particular in Ontario where everybody gets a little salad bar container, and that sort of serves as their ticket and also their dish that they then take home with them and wash and bring back the following week. And so it also helps them to reduce food waste as well, because utensil waste, because they don't have the facilities in that school to be able to offer reusable dishes. So there's lots of different ways. With that, I think we're out of time and actually just over. So if there's any remaining questions, I think we can address those over email. We will send out the slides as well as a short evaluation. We'd love to hear your feedback on the webinar. And just a reminder about application deadline is March 27th. And if you have any questions, you can also reach us at farmtoschoolcanadagrants@gmail.com, and we'd be happy to answer those. So thank you everybody for your time and for joining us today. And thank you, Carolyn and Claudia, for your assistance.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.